move that we use the agenda as written.
Any
Second.
comments? Okay, so all in favor? Okay. All right. In the minutes of our last meeting, which was interesting, now Nancy, you were not here, so you
I will
cannot
abstain.
vote for those, but we do have two of us, so we can approve
Motion
those.
to approve?
Make a motion to approve the minutes?
Yes, sir.
A
Second.
All in favor? Okay.
Abstain.
All right. That's old business starting, so, Ron, before we get started with review, I still have concerns about this joint commission. We approved it the last meeting with conditions, and those conditions were presented, but I've heard no response from anybody as to what those conditions, if they're met, if they're not. What was presented at council is totally different than anything we have seen, including the stuff that you sent out in a memo this afternoon. Still shows 7 members on that commission, but the council and David said it was be 5 commissions on the joint committee. But I still have no idea who the membership is. Can there be elected officials? Can anybody clarify that?
As far as the elected officials, I tried to get that out of the council during the work session, and also out of the everyone that was present in the room, as we usually have during the council sessions. And I wasn't really exactly met with a lot of response. Ourselves, we did take in between the work session and the at the final session, if you will, later that afternoon, we went back. I didn't have the newest language. I received the newest language from David, and I put that forward before the council for them to make sure that they had that information. So that the day of the council was the day I received the language. That was the day that it was published online by the clerk.
Well, what you sent out this afternoon, though, was not that information, because it still said 7 members.
I got it right from the city clerk's site.
If that's the case, it's different than, than what the council approved.
We can take a look at it.
Besides,
Yeah. Let me see.
I mean, it seems to me that David probably should have clarified this business about whether an elected official could serve or not. I mean, if an elected official can serve on that committee, that's got to be a conflict of interest.
I agree.
Just checking over the email from earlier here.
From the P and Z from the last meeting? Oh, Doug made the motion and I seconded it, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
are P and Z, are you permitted to consult with the city council?
I do. I don't know whether I'm permitted or not.
Well, I'm asking just like, in other words, instead of going like to go directly to him and talk about the
I've-
conflict of interest
I
and
have
see if you
asked
can get a
David.
ruling on it.
I have asked him, and he agrees
Oh,
that it could be,
that's just something maybe,
yeah.
okay.
All right. I was just reminded there was some confusion at the council meeting because it was uploaded. The correct version was uploaded to the work session, but it didn't transfer over to the final session. So what I sent out earlier today actually was the last session. It wasn't from the first session. So we'll get you the correct version of that to you guys as soon as tomorrow. But it is on the city's website now. I don't know if we want to, even if we wanted to pull it up right now, we can do that. We can pull it up, we can take a look at it, and we can go through it.
Well, again, I guess my question at this point is, again, elected officials. And I don't believe that's addressed in, can you say whether it is addressed in this latest edition?
I think what the council approved, elected officials would be allowed to be on the committee.
I mean, how can that be other than a conflict of interest then? I mean, if you have members of the school board or members of the council serving on this joint committee, approving something that the council then is going to approve or deny, is that not a conflict?
Our council members will not be on the board because our charter addresses that. Our council, I think who you'll see on our board will not be elected officials from the city of Billerica. You may see elected officials from Carroll County on this committee, but not from the city of Billerica.
You know, regardless, it seems to me that if you're elected from the school board or from the county or the council, how can you serve on this committee?
John,
Yes.
may I ask a question? I think what I'm hearing is that as long as there are not elected officials in the city of Billerica, that another person from the county could serve on it, and then they would only be there as a visitor and not have anything to say. So they would not be able to speak up unless it was under public comment, because I can understand if it were an elected official from the city of Billerica, I could see that as a conflict of interest. But if they're not allowed to say anything and they're not elected officials in our city, but in the county, then I can understand why they would be on there. It's simply because when we're looking at the county commissioners, and you've got Michelle Morgan and Clinton and all of the others, we can go sit in there as commissioners but not say anything because we're observing. So is that similar to what we're trying to say here?
I think so.
No, we're really talking whether a city council person who is an elected official can serve on the joint committee.
Right.
And my position is no, they cannot, without it being a conflict of interest. Plus, another thing about, and maybe it's changed, but in the information that I have seen, the termination dates for all 5 or 7 or however many members there are all identical, which says there's no staggering of those members. So you got everybody on that joint committee coming on board as soon as it's formed and terminating at the end of 24. And then you got them all over again. So again, no staggering of that. This whole thing has just been put together, it seems to me, without a great deal of thought or consideration.
It's even more, we've discussed the staggering here for P and Z.
Right.
And it's a little confusing, a little bit. And it would even be more, so for this joint commission, because if there are elected officials, then the question becomes what happens if their elected term expires? Do they then and they don't gain office again or retain office? Are they now converted to unelected officials on the?
Well,
So
again,
it almost makes me feel, not that it would accomplish anything, if I just say it real quick, it almost feels like until or unless this commission gets answers, not that anybody would care, but we should just table, just not even vote, just not be put under pressure to give it to the council because they want to vote on the next city council. If we can't get answers going forward, just
Well-
stop it.
Again, the city council has already approved this.
I just mean on going forward if other stuff like this comes up.
Is that not correct?
Well, you would have 45 days to give a recommendation or some form of action. Otherwise, it would go automatically to the city council.
Well, no, I'm saying at the last council meeting, the council approved this item.
Sir, yes.
So,
And thank you for pointing that out, but I would, me personally, I would still do that just to be not condoning that this commission is being asked to vote on things with incomplete information on some serious items. So even if it was 5 days and it just moved on anyway, at least it wasn't condoned by this group. And I don't mean to be, you know, pain in the neck, I'm just
I
saying.
think at this point, there's nothing more that we can do.
No.
The item has been approved by the council. I still think the council better address these issues. I would appreciate seeing that, whatever it is that was revised.
I'll send
If
that
we
out
can.
to you guys, yeah.
Excuse me.
Okay, with that, why don't you move forward then, Ron?
Mr. Drummond, do you work at the same law firm as the council at the city council meetings? Okay. So I mean, you two work together, you can talk about this? Okay. It seems to me that would be a very good opportunity for us to get clarity on all these things before the meeting, that if you two got together and brought us that information.
Okay, Ron?
And Ron, you, on page 9, we've already redacted part of that. Is that what you're going to give us, the new part of it, without all the redaction and the red lines that we have under? It's under page 8 and 9.
Oh, it's all over. It's all through the document. There's a
Okay.
bunch of red
But-
line.
Yeah,
a
but
bunch
but
of-
this one is specifically for P and Z, on page 8 and 9.
Let me just take a look at what yours is. Probably faster than moving on.
I think it's the one that we had previously that
Yeah,
we
it's the older
questioned.
one on the other page.
Oh, yeah, this is the older one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so,
So you'll be sending us the newer one.
yeah, so it's actually, it should be in here.
It should be on there.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, as a part of what's being passed tonight,
all right.
let me just make sure I don't wanna. You said 8 and 9, all right?
Can you just over to page 10?
All right.
well, regardless, send us whatever the current one is tomorrow.
I found it here.
That's,
Okay.
that's,
Um,
that's the old one.
Nothing changed from the last,
Should have,
everything's changed from the last meeting.
should have changed with the last council meeting, as a result of the last council meeting.
These are terms from the last council meeting, we didn't have any changes to the planning commissioner's terms.
No, no.
Yeah. So the dates that are listed, that I have listed here, that we didn't change anything from the last meeting to this meeting. Of course, other than that section 2.02.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
11.05, I think stayed the same. Yeah, I just want to compare it to what yours was here. I just want to make sure before we any further. Yeah, these are correct. This is correct. You have the right one.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the right one.
Okay.
Okay, Ron,
All right, thank you, guys. So we had a little, we had a presentation, we talked about during the last presentation, we talked about maybe doing a little bit of a kind of a series of these different trainings and things for the planning commissioners. So I've actually started doing this already with the HPC. It's been turning out really good. So we kind of, the way that I'm envisioning that kind of working is we would have a topic, and we'll go over what the different table of contents are for this presentation. But we'll have a topic. It will change topics every time that we get together, and we'll go over a couple slides. So it's not too long. It would just really try to keep it to 10 to 15 slides each meeting. It's basically until the end of the year, where we can cover all of the material that's in this training session, which we'll kind of go over in the beginning here. So if you have that presentation here.
Can you talk into the mic, please?
All you ever wanted to know.
All right. Use this. Use it this way. I like this. Thanks. Okay. So you guys might want to swivel around if you can. All right, so these are the trainings that I have kind of spaced out here by month. It'll be, the first one we're going to do tonight is Zoning Procedures Act, and we're going to go over what our governing document really is for this commission, and for all commissions in Georgia, and all municipalities in Georgia. Using zoning standards will be next month's meeting. Then we'll do conflicts of interest and other ethical issues. That's going to be a pretty big chapter to go over, as well as what is the requirements in the state for the Open Meetings Act. So we just always need to make sure we have that refresher to make sure we don't, of course, step out of line with that. The constitutional, different constitutional issues and challenges, we're going to go over that as well. That's a really short section, so we're going to combine that with legislative versus administrative decisions, which there's been some changes to that in the past 2 years. I believe the legislature in 2021 passed a requirement for, was it 21 or 22?
Went into effect
Yeah.
3 that was passed in
21, that's right, yeah. So a lot of different changes to the Zoning Procedures Act and all that. So that's all going to be covered in here as well.
Again, not to be a pain, but, there's nothing about training for this joint committee. And I question whether there shouldn't be training for them as well. I mean, they're like P and Z, why don't they have training? Again, go ahead. Just a question.
All right. Constitutional authority to plan and zone. So this basically goes over the section of the state ordinances and guidelines for Constitution that the Constitution gives us to do what we do here, and for community development and to plan our city and to zone. So it says up here, the governing authority of each county and of each municipality may adopt plans and may exercise the power of zoning. This authorization shall not prohibit the General Assembly from enacting general laws establishing procedures for the exercise of such power. So obviously things can change with every General Assembly that gets together with the state. So in the state, so things can change, but this is rooted in home rule, which of course some states offer and provide home rule power and authority to municipalities and counties and governing bodies to make certain decisions. One of which is usually zoning and the exercise of different police powers. So Georgia is one of those states, as you can imagine. And Georgia statutes that specifically govern land use, planning, and policy. So there's a couple of them, but they're all kind of go back to the first one here, the Zoning Procedures Law. That's the overarching governing, I guess, umbrella document. And everything underneath it, transfers of development rights, conflicts of interest in zoning acts, coordinated and comprehensive planning, which is something that we're going through right now, the requirement to do comprehensive planning every 5 years, and pass a new future land use map. So all of that kind of are all essentially, I don't want to call them amendments to the Zoning Procedures Act, but they were additions essentially, or addendums in the way that they operate. Georgia statutes that specifically govern land use again, so it keeps going on. Limitations of junk, outdoor advertising, things of that nature. So it's getting more and more specific. Wireless communications facilities is one thing that I come into contact with every once in a while. It seems like it's increasing more and more. I don't know if you all remember the 5G ordinance that we passed back some time ago. I want to say this was maybe back in 2021, but that probably would have fell underneath the last one. And I think it was a state requirement to have some form of 5G coverage within your ordinances of some form. So it's getting more and more specific as things move forward. So the Zoning Procedures Act was actually the next one for the next month. So these are really quick. Like I said, some of these are going to be a little bit longer than others, but we can continue or we can stop here.
Ron, will we be able to download a copy of your slides?
I can absolutely send them or put them on the city's website. Yep,
Great, thank you.
sure.
Why don't we stop at this point and go ahead with the rest of the agenda,
Sounds good. All right.
unless somebody objects to that?
No, sir.
Oh, I had a small change to the agenda, actually. The next item, we actually already passed it. We passed the next item, but I think the definition that was on the bottom of that, it still needs to be voted on, but that's going to become later. We included it on the 6th item,
Okay.
so we could just do away with that. Chapters 1 through 7, revision. Yeah, it's hard to see the numbers up there. I know. Should be the last one. Oh, it's not open. It should be the 1, 2, 3, number 3. Perfect. That's it. All right. So we had a presentation, and we've had this item before us for the good part of the summer, so we can hash out some of the different items within it and some of the different changes that the staff was proposing. And I think at the end of the last meeting, we talked about us being pretty much ready to move forward and to head to a vote on this item. So I don't want to belabor it, but essentially all the changes that we had from the ordinance that was passed out relatively recently to you all, that was dated October of 2022. This would be the first change since that time period, and it's pretty extensive. As you can see, it covers almost all of the chapters 1 through 7, and we're going to continue on through chapters 8, 9, 10 as we keep moving forward. But this is the first big change, so I'll just hand it back to you guys to move forward with voting.
And I'm gonna recommend on page
Yes.
14, continuing page 15, that we strike
A little more. Oh, this is 3. Go up a little bit. More.
Want the, I don't know what we all want to do.
To go 205, 2.05. Is everybody taking it out? All right, scroll up just a little bit.
It's not on there.
Yes, it's It looks like we are the ones that have the wrong version. You guys have the right version. He has the right version. It should be 2.05 is what we're looking at right now.
What's the next page up?
I'm telling you,
Where you
it's
are
some
right
of that safe one.
Mr. Chair, is this all the stuff we went over last month?
Yes,
But we didn't vote on this after?
we started to, and then Kevin said he had some things that he wanted to look at, so it was tabled. But yes, we were ready to vote on it.
Okay. This is a lot of information, and a month later, it's hard to remember what, everything we talked about.
Almost there. Hold up. We got it. There. Still have one more.
Roman numeral 9, that entire section needs to be taken out. And what Ron was trying to do there, when we talked about the changes in the Zoning Procedures Act, that's the exact language out of that statute, but we're actually gonna need to move that where we talk about how we run a council meeting. So it's gonna be in a different section. So this whole section needs to come out.
I'm not sure I follow what you're saying. This relates to the council?
The changes in the Zoning Procedures Act states we have to include in our ordinance how we run a council meeting. We've already included how we run P and Z meetings, it's pretty well
Right.
spelled out.
Right,
We don't have it spelled out for how we run council meetings.
okay.
So, that's basically what this code section is addressing, so it can come out of this completely. We'll have to plug it in somewhere else, somewhere for a different day.
All right.
Yep.
So we're all ready for a vote whenever you are all ready.
Well, again, we're voting on what?
It'll be chapters 1 through 7.
Okay.
You wanna-
Again, we had pretty much discussed those chapters previously. So, you know, and my point was, we had all received this material and read it. So I would entertain a motion to approve these chapters 1 through 7 as revised.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept these chapters as revised.
Okay. Say again?
I move that we accept the chapters as revised, 1 through 7 as revised.
Just move to approve chapters 1 through 7
Okay, sorry.
as revised. So,
Okay.
you second?
This is just a lot of information, and be honest with you, I'm not very comfortable voting on when there's so much stuff I don't fully understand.
But we've been discussing them for the last few months.
It's been in our package, and we put it off for several council meetings, and And in fact, at the last meeting, we were ready to approve it.
Yeah, I think that's the determining factor for me, is that it is stuff that we have already gone over,
Right,
and we were ready to vote
Right.
on it, but we had to cut that meeting. But there's nothing else in here. As a matter of fact, something's being deleted now,
Right.
but there's nothing else.
Yeah, nothing
Okay.
else, just
Right.
taking
Okay.
that section out.
And that is the specific reason I didn't want y'all to vote and make that part of our ordinance, that section that we're agreeing to take out.
Okay. With the understanding that we've already reviewed this and we're ready to vote on it, I second.
okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Phew.
All right. Let's go full speed ahead into the next one. Section 9.05 revision. Well, it's not really a revision, it's actually an introduction. But warehousing, distribution, and logistics design standards. So this would be for our new I3 zone. So we're interested, like we talked about at the last commission meeting, we're interested in starting a new I3 zone that would be specific for warehousing and logistics, distribution centers, and things of that nature. The large, big, giant boxes that we see being constructed all over surrounding us. So we felt like it was best to have specific standards for those types of buildings when they come here, instead of trying to do a one-size-fit-all in an I2 zone that would have different lot sizes and things of that nature. So these would be in chapters 1 through 7, we introduced the I3 zone and we just voted on that. But this document here, 9.05, is specific to the design of those buildings. So this is just strictly speaking to just the design of them, the facades and architecture, things of that nature.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
No.
Doug?
I'll keep my comments to myself, thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to approve as presented.
I move to move as presented.
Is there a second? I'll second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 2-1.
All right, let's do the next one. Section 13.01 is just definitions. These are definitions in order to make chapters 1 through 7 actually work. So as a part of that, we introduced 4 new definitions to the definition section. 3 of them all pertain to chapter 1.04 of the ordinance, with the whole change of use and all of that that we did go over at the last 2 meetings. So we're introducing developed parcels, underdeveloped parcels, and undeveloped parcels. And also, we need a definition for what a package store is. We didn't actually introduce any sort of definitions when we moved forward with introducing package stores as an approvable use, essentially, in the city, and allowing licenses. So in order to do so, we felt it necessary to introduce that as well, package stores. And so this will help us, at least certainly the first 3 will help us tremendously in being able to actually have our new zoning or the revised zoning ordinance work effectively and actually work in general. Otherwise, without them, any change of use wouldn't work. So it's all based on these definitions.
Thank you for the detailed changes. I really enjoy making sure that we know exactly what they are. That was good.
Thank you. Thank
That
you
was
very
good.
much. Mhm.
Any further discussion, Ron?
That's it.
Any discussion from
No, this vote is just on these definitions?
Just on the definitions.
I'll entertain a motion to approve as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second,
Any further discussion?
No, sir.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right. New business? All right. The moratorium is still in effect until the city council lifts it. We did pass the section 2.02 and 11.05 as we talked about, but there wasn't a motion to actually lift the moratorium. So they're going to do that. We're expecting that to happen at the next meeting, and then we'll start getting a flow of some applications. I have heard of at least one applicant that would like to submit for a multifamily development. It would be quite prominent development. So, we are still, we told them, just like we told everybody else, that they can't submit until the moratorium is lifted. So now they're excited for this to finally be over so they can actually submit. So that'll probably be our next application for this commission. I don't have any, as we didn't have tonight, we didn't have any applications for that reason. And I'm expecting that to go on and probably until September as well. So we're probably not going to get an actual public hearing until for an applicant until October.
Ron, will we have a chance to know where they're planning on wanting to put this, so we might be able to take a look at it and see? Or is it too early?
I don't want to prejudice the applicant.
Okay.
I'll give them their day in hearing, but as soon as we do get that, if there's, I'll make sure I let you guys know, or I'll send it out. But essentially, it's they haven't applied yet, so I can't really, say the
Understood.
name.
Any
so.
chance of going back to the planning stuff that we were considering on Zoom for any of these?
For like a pre-submittal
Yeah,
and stuff. Yeah. Well, we were on there, but the problem is we didn't have the setup before. It was just basically a tablet. Tom has a new screen with what I believe might be a camera on it. So I'll have to check with IT and see if that's a possibility, because that would be much easier, very easy. We could just hook the iPad up wirelessly to his screen. It works
yeah,
very easy.
it was pretty ugly before. But,
Yeah, you couldn't see anything.
again, useful.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't really see anything because you have the iPad is pitched towards up,
Right.
so.
Well, look into that, because again,
believe-
I think that's useful information for us.
I think so. I think Tom thought so too. I think that's why we ended up doing it. So
Good,
yeah.
good, okay.
I'm sorry, did you say it was, not asking anything about the applicant, but just what you had already said, did you say it was single, unattached housing?
No, it would be multifamily housing. Multifamily, mixed use, possibly, but definitely apartments.
But we're
Thank
not
you.
apt to hear that until October.
Probably not until October. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Anything else under new business?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Staff comments.
It's still busy, but we've caught up quite tremendously in the past month and a half, I'd say. The office is in a lot better shape than it was. So we're knocking things out, but we have a lot more stuff to do. So we're gonna be starting a couple new initiatives to try to bridge some gaps in communication across the whole city. All the boards, all the staff, all the city council, but having some updates, from at least from planning and zoning. I want to have some updates for everyone and kind of have it as a almost like I don't want to say the word newsletter. I hate newsletters, but almost like a newsletter for everyone to know what's coming up, what's been received, and where it's going. So we can have as much information ahead of time, but also what's expected to come forward in the next couple months or what have you from the board as we might know it. It's almost like a big viewpoint of everything, a commanding view of everything that's coming up. So everyone kind of is in the know of what's going on. Where is this project? In the whole, process from at least a conceptual standpoint. So that's one thing. Another difference and change is we are, I lost my train of thought here. Website. We're changing the website quite a bit. So we have,
Good.
I have three yeah, I can't take it. I can't stand it. There's documents missing. There's stuff all over the place. Names aren't on there that don't even work here anymore. So we're gonna clean that up for all three pages: community development, HPC, and the planning commission's page. Make it actually make sense, because there's documents under planning commission that have nothing to do with the planning commission at all. So a lot of that needs to be cleaned up. Same thing with the HPC's page, cleaned up. And that's what we're going to be working on sometime next week.
Can you say any more about the comprehensive planning
Yes.
activity?
Yes. So we're meeting now weekly in-house to just discuss about the future land use map and discuss what all the changes that we kind of talked about at the steering committee level, and how to actually implement that on the map. So there's definitely been some great discussion on that in the past. We just started last Monday, and then we just had one this week. But Three Rivers has been definitely helpful in getting us to kind of think a little bit differently about the city, but also taking all of our comments into consideration too. So that I like. It seems like they've captured comments from everybody and is really trying to move all these things forward. So a lot of your comments actually about transportation for seniors, for example, that was like a pretty dominant theme that I've talked to them about, and that seems to be reflected greatly in the survey responses that we've gotten back from area residents. So you're not the only person who feels that way, that's for sure.
Can you comment on how many responses you got? I mean,
Yeah, so we've received so far about 200 responses, a little over 200 responses. So not as many as we may have wanted to have. We of course may have wanted more. The more, the better. But a lot of the respondents, we were able to kind of to see where they were in if they lived in Villa Rica, if they were just people who maybe worked here or what have you. Some of the statistics are pretty surprising in what people are really saying, or at least what their lifestyle is like might be a little bit different than what we may have expected. So lots of seniors. At least as far as who's representative of answering the survey, at least, but lots of seniors answered. Recreational facilities is definitely a top concern for people moving forward and wanting more recreational activities and more programming and things of that nature. But I don't want to spoil it all. We're still compiling everything together. They just gave me a snapshot, but we're just going to wait until the window closes for the survey, and then from there we'll give everything to the planning commission and to the city council as well, I'm sure.
but there'll be no more steering committee meetings?
Well, that was our last meeting that we had. Yeah, number 4 was the last one. So we closed that. So they can actually start working on the future land use map for August, and then in September they're going to put the report together, and we'll have it to the council by October.
Okay. There was quite an extensive effort put forth about branding.
Yes.
Where does that stand?
I wasn't a part of that branding process. It was almost like I hear it from around in different places, but, as a being that we weren't actually a part of that, I want to say Tom at one of the steering committee meetings did mention the branding at some point there. Someone mentioned it. But I don't think I don't know if it's planned to be in the comp plan or not. I'll check with Three Rivers to see if they have anything on it, but I haven't contributed anything to getting them that information about branding, because I have never received any information on it. And I don't know if it's really, I don't know if that's something that usually goes in a comp plan or not. I don't know, branding.
So I think we'll get an update. We've got a council retreat coming up, and we'll probably get an update from Tom at that point.
There should be something. There was, there was more turnout at that one meeting on branding than we had on the entire comprehensive plan steering committee. So,
Sarah's still working on that, so we'll establish it.
Yeah, I don't think it's finalized yet. Not that I'm aware of.
good, right. Anything else, Ron?
That's it.
Okay. Any comments, any of the commissioners?
How about questions?
Public comment.
Questions for staff?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just various topics, Ron.
All right.
The moratorium, I think you said is going to end shortly when the city council votes to end it. And I'm sorry, I think I've asked you this before, but what was the moratorium designed for? What was the purpose of it?
Sure. We put a moratorium in place in order to get the joint committee language together first, because we couldn't move forward with we couldn't move forward without having the joint commission in place. Being that we had agreements with the county.
Okay, and thank you. And when P and Z Commission yay or nays approves or denies something, and that information goes to City Council, from what I've seen, unless I'm missing it, it says P and Z has approved or denied, and 3-2 or gives the vote. But it doesn't give any, I'm not familiar with seeing, why P and Z approved it, or why, just a brief reason or highlights of why P and Z approved it or denied it. Is that there and I'm missing it? And the reason I'm asking is I'm wondering if that's something that we could add.
I think you might be referring to the cover sheet, right, for the meetings?
Yes. And usually it will just say, P and Z unanimously approved. But it won't say approved because they feel we need this in the city, or denied because we feel we've already got too many gas stations, or not a song and dance, but just a little.
So I've refrained from doing that strategically. I'm not doing that because without getting all into it, it's hard to summarize the boards, if it's a denial particularly. It's very hard to summarize 5 people's comments to where they would reflect the entire board. And so, the staff would really be walking a really tight rope with doing that. But what I do instead is I'll provide the minutes to the city council. So when I get up there, they have the minutes already. They already know what already happened at the meetings. And sometimes I get calls from council members on that too, and they might ask to clarify what the P&Z's position was on a topic. But if I did start doing that and putting those reasons in there, I also am worried because some of the decisions that comes from the board, if I was to summarize them, the summary would be very improper. I'll just say that. And I mean that from a legal perspective. I don't want a situation, because I've seen a lot of things that have come, and this isn't a negative thing to the commission or anything, but some of the decisions that come out and some of the reasons for why it's based on, some of the decisions are based off of, are not legally, I can't legally defend, honestly, just from a professional standpoint. I can't legally defend some of them. But I never call out what they are because of the liability to the city that can happen. And so with all that being said, I don't want to drag that in front of a city council meeting as well. And then they're scratching their heads, well, they denied it because they didn't like rental housing. That's something that I can't defend.
Does that is that example, does that happen to be a legal one that
Yeah.
that you're not allowed to deny because you think you have enough rental housing in the
Yeah.
city already?
No, yeah, that's against housing policy, housing law,
Okay,
U.S. housing law, yeah.
okay,
So we have to treat rental neighbors and rental properties the same as we would a single-family detached homeowner. They're both taxpayers. You know, there's, we would essentially have, other than, of course, zoning district standards, we ultimately have to treat them, their applications the same, and their denial reasons could very well be very different than one another, because there's a different, without going all into zoning and stuff, there's different parking demand, different, you know, different
Right.
requirements of a development, depending on the size and the type. But it needs to stick to zoning reasons why. It can't be based off market or economic reasons or anything like that. But as we go forward with the training and stuff, we're going to talk more about those
okay.
different topics.
But it's got to be based on, like, I'm smiling because you said it's got to be based on zoning reasons, but we kind of take the planning out of it. So if we, the planning part, which I think is more important than the zoning, or rezoning, if the plan is that we, group thinks that, you know, it's not a good plan to have, you know, the whole town be, you know, disproportionate rental properties, the planning part has to be ignored for the planning is a preference, the zoning is law.
Well, I usually think of it as planning is more policy, but zoning is more the hard facts, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I
and
think
how
these
to
other
operate.
I think these other ones will just be real quick.
Sure.
Do we have a start date for the joint committee?
I haven't seen one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to be months, or have any idea?
Well, the day that we lift the moratorium, I would imagine that committee would have to be in place. So between now and the expiration in, I think, September 15th, 30 days from now, that committee needs to be in place.
Okay. And the last thing is, when we talk about golf cart, anytime we hear about golf cart, it's from like Mirror Lake area to the downtown. And I'm wondering if there can be any discussion to expand that to the southern part, south of Bankhead Highway. A lot of towns are doing this. And
I think we may.
let's just say
talk a
to
little bit
Spring
about
Street,
that.
for example.
Yeah.
And so you'd have Westview, you'd have South Carroll, south of Candler. You know, you'd have some of the rest of the downtown area that could also access.
Mhm.
Is there any way to discuss that, or?
Well, earlier today in this same room, we had a meeting, the Preacher's Breakfast, that they have, I believe, once a month, here in Villa Rica. And, we did a presentation, and I say we, Chris Montesinos and I, he's the special projects manager. We did a presentation on all the new development that we have here in town, and he showed a map of sidewalk expansions that are key. And as a part of that, it really was areas surrounding the downtown. So we, as a part of that same map, the golf cart trails and expansions and what phases of expansions we're going to be doing. We're basically, if you can picture it, going from east to west. We're starting in Mirror Lake, and then we're going to branch out and keep hitting until we get to the downtown area, and then expand our sidewalks network around. So all of it's connected. So I think it would be best if you talk to him now. I don't know if what he's already applied for included sidewalks in the areas surrounding the downtown, or if the golf cart path can be expanded further south. But he would be the person that heads that. That's considered a special project for him. So.
Okay.
So he'd be the person to ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ron,
Thank you.
with all of the details now and the changes that we put into the ordinances that clarify not only the description, would it be possible, rather than to give a reason why, to go ahead and put the paragraph or number of the ordinance, so if anybody wants to know why, they could go look it up themselves.
Well, it's not always tied to a code or ordinance for why we deny something. Usually it's not. Usually it's, based off of different, I guess, I don't even know how to really describe it, but essentially it's your, it's what you guys feel essentially is based on a set group of criteria.
Okay.
So I can't really, we have the criteria if we go through my staff reports, and I have to answer all the questions from the city's ordinance and also the state ordinances and requirements. So unless we stick to those different, questions or, or reasons for why we're denying things, then I wouldn't really feel comfortable doing it.
Okay, at this time, let me open to public comments. Anybody wishes to address the commission, please come forward and state your name and address and what your concerns or comments are. So, anybody? Going once? Going twice? Okay. Public comments will be closed. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Well,
Thank you.
almost 7 o'clock. We did
Almost.
fairly well.
I think so.
That live reporter thinks to say that I can never hear you. You never use the mic.
Oh, it's on.
You can't hear, and you're standing so far away. Like you're standing like this. The only thing I can hear is I can hear you flick your pen all the time. That's all.